What's up, people of the internet? My name is Davicab, and the Play Artifact Twitter has just released a second revealed card in one day. This one called Champion of the Ancients. So we're going to go over this card today, talk about its strengths and weaknesses, so stay tuned. Alright, Champion of the Ancients. This bad boy is a green 7 cost creep with 2 attack and 6 health. Pure body, this thing has measly stats, but it gets much bigger, much buffer with its ability. When you play this card, it becomes permanently modified, gaining +1 attack, +1 health, and +1 cleave for each enemy in the lane. So very obviously, if you play this against a very wide enemy board, this thing could get huge. Play this on an empty enemy board and you are wasting your mana on a measly 2/6 nobody. So if we're trying to figure out the strength of this card, the best thing we can compare it to is the Ogre Conscript. That thing costs 1 less mana but has comparable stats. Now, as we talk about this, keep in mind that even though these things are kind of similar in strength and mana cost, we can't exactly compare their stats perfectly because different colors weigh things differently. For example, Bronze Legionnaire and Untested Brute both have 4 2s for 2 mana, but the Bronze Legionnaire has 2 extra armor because red is a little bit better at being brawly and black is more aggressive. So essentially the colors are better and worse at certain things. Champion of the Ancient is going to be a little bit difficult to evaluate because its power level fluctuates so much based on the enemy board. So we're going to kind of gradually climb up the ladder of larger and larger boards to evaluate this card. So right off the bat, let's look at a small board that has between, let's say, 0 and 2 enemy creatures on it. In that case, this card is a flop. You're looking at, best case scenario, 4 attack and just 2 cleave, which makes it, I guess, about as strong as maybe a red hero. So like not terrible in terms of how strong it is, but for 7 mana, no. Not mana. For 7 mana, you're much better off casting things like Hand of God or Thunder God's Wrath, obviously in a different color, but like 7 mana spells are strong. 7 mana cards are useful and powerful. But if you're just putting out a creature with 4 attack, 8 health, and 2 cleave, then your opponent is going to laugh at you and you're just not going to have a good time in that lane, trust me. The more likely scenario when you're going to play this is against sort of like a medium strength board, like one of those lanes where you and your opponent are both trying to kill the enemy tower. Like maybe you've won lane 1, they've won lane 3, and you're both sort of contesting in lane 2 to see who comes out on top. And in that case, you're both putting a lot of things on the board, so you've got maybe 3 to 6 things on your side of the board, and they got 3 to 6 things on their side of the board. I think that's probably the majority of the time when people are going to see this card played, when you get sort of like a middling value out of it. And in this case, the card is pretty good, you know, not bad. You're going to get decent stats. It's going to help swing the board in your favor. The cleave is going to help, you know, weaken in the cone shape in front of it to help take out those enemy heroes, to help take out that creep. And I would say in those scenarios, the card could certainly help you win a lane. It'll help take you from a losing state to a winning state. And those are always the cards we want to see, because if a card is only useful when you're winning, then who cares? And if a card doesn't do anything when you're losing, who cares? So you want those cards that help turn the board around and turn a losing game into a winning game. And this card in this scenario against that middle size, like 3 to 6 enemies, can do just that. So let's climb further up along the mountain up to like 7+ enemy creatures. And you think to yourself, oh, perfect, right? Let's suppose the opponent has, you know, 10 minions on the enemy board. You play this sucker and he's massive. Look at all the value. For only 7 mana, I get something with like 10 attack and 15 health or whatever it is, and all this cleave. And yes, that's true. It will be a really big creature, but you've got to keep in mind what it's going to cost to get a creature that big. You're going to have to play this against a lane that is really going to be kind of overwhelming, right? If the enemy has 10 or more creatures on the board, then that probably means that you are losing that lane or about to lose that lane. Or I should say more accurately, it's probably the case that the enemy is about to destroy your tower. And sure, this creature has cleave built into it, and it's going to be really big, so it's going to deal out a lot of cleave. But I mean, you kind of have to imagine if there's 10 minions 10 creatures, and you play just this creature by itself, then it can only block the one thing in front of it and damage it simultaneously. So the two things that it cleave are still going to go through and hit whatever's in front of them, be it a creature or the tower. And then the things are going to condense. And the thing to keep in mind about cleave, this is kind of one of the weaknesses about cleave. Basically, when you attack, you only attack the lane of creatures or the tower. So that means that if you attack a creature, then because you're attacking the lane of creatures, then the cleave triggers and you're able to attack to the sides. But if you kill the thing in front of you, which seems kind of likely because you've got an attack buff built into this creature, then that's going to leave an empty slot. The board's going to condense. You're not going to have anything in front of you. And on the next turn, you're going to be probably going through the tower unless, the enemy plays something in front of it. So I don't know if this is going to be an effective board clearing thing. I kind of imagine this scenario. They got 10 minions. You play this in front of it. You cleave and kill the 3 things in front of it. They go from 10 minions to 7. They condense the board. Then the opponent doesn't bother playing anything in front of you, because why would they? They just attacked with 7 things. They've probably destroyed your tower. They probably accomplished what they've come to accomplish. So they don't care about those minions anymore. They abandon the lane to take the other lanes. Meanwhile, you're stuck with 7 minions that you can't hit because you can't cleave into them, and you're just hitting the tower. I could sort of see that being quite a likely scenario. Therefore, I don't see this card as like oh shoot, I'm about to lose this lane to a really wide enemy board. I need to play this card to clear the board, because I don't think it will do a good job of clearing the board. I see this card as like, wow, the enemy has invested really heavily in this board. They made a really wide lane. Normally, most cards that I play wouldn't be able to break their way through this massive line of creatures to hurt the enemy tower and destroy it, but this card can. So when you play this, it's not going to save your tower. Probably your tower is probably still going to go down because the cleave just probably isn't going to cut it, but it is going to punish the enemy. So they may have taken your tower, but now you've got this massive, like 15 health, basically a hero. Like, this thing is basically going to be as strong as a red hero decked out in relatively powerful items, smacking into their tower. So they're going to have to go back to the lane and either stop it, or they're going to have to race you in those other lanes. So it's kind of like a punishment, right? It's like you say, yes, you are going to take my tower, but you're going to give me a massive creep, and that creep is going to start pressuring your tower because he's so freaking big, and anything that gets close to him is going to get cleaved down. You kind of have to keep in mind that this thing has a climbing power scale, right? More enemies, more power. More enemies, more power. More enemies, more power. More enemies, more power. But there's like a cliff at the end of that, right? You 2 minions, 4 enemies, 6 enemies, 8 enemies, 10 enemies, 15 enemies. Like, once you're at like 15, 20 enemies, this thing's just not going to do anything, man. You know what I mean? I can sort of imagine a scenario where someone plays a Red Mist Pillager and it starts doubling and doubling and doubling. And you're like, aha, you have 10 Red Mist Pillagers. Surprise, I play this card. And then they smack into it and kill 3 of the Red Mist Pillagers. The Red Mist Pillagers double, and there's something like 20 Red Mist Pillagers, and the other player's like, I don't care. Like, I don't really care that you have this massive creature in the lane, because my lane is so wide, so huge, I'm just going to destroy your ancient this turn. So there's a cliff, there's like a stopping point for its power, which is kind of a limiting factor, honestly. So I think the best way to judge this is sort of like the mid-tier power option. Most of the games, most times you're going to use this, it's going to be sort of like the, against 3 to 6 heroes you're going to play this, and it's going to help you secure the lane. There's going to be times when you have to play it against a small board, and it's going to get like a +2 buff, which sucks super hard. You're probably not going to win that game. And then there's going to be other games where you play against a massive board and it's just not going to be enough. They're still going to destroy your ancient. However, I will say there will be times when an opponent will play a massive board, a very wide lane. You play this minion, they attack, everyone attacks, and because they're so wide, they destroy your tower, but because your guy is so big, you destroy their tower, and you kind of do an even 1-for-1 trade. I think this card is actually going to give you that some of the times. So, is this card good? I don't know. I kind of feel like it depends on the meta, to be honest, because obviously the more decks you play against that have lots and lots of minions, the stronger it's going to be. For example, the blue-black deck in Pact was all about creating a super wide lane with Dimensional Portal, Disciple of Nevermore, and then swinging in for massive damage. And against that deck, this card would be quite powerful, more useful than normal. In contrast, there's also a red-blue deck at PAX which had no creatures in it with the exception of Red Mist Pillagers. And while it's true that Red Mist Pillagers can double and get bigger and bigger and bigger, let's not focus on that specific example. Let's just take red-blue on the whole as an average and just look at this as a deck that has basically no creatures. You are definitely going to play against decks like that just have a bunch of spells, a bunch of heroes, and just literally the only creatures are going to have the entire game is just the melee creep. Against those decks, this card is going to suck. It's going to suck hard. It's going to be an overly priced, insanely expensive 7 mana card that you play and just doesn't have decent stats and is not going to help you win that game. So, I don't know. The effect is kind of binary, and while we may think that it has like infinite scaling power, that's just really not the case. Eventually it hits the cliff and nosedives. I mean, it's decent. It's decent. You know, I give it like, you know, a B minus, I suppose. It's okay. The really interesting thing about this card is the rarity symbol, or at least we assume the rarity symbol in the bottom. Earlier, the Play Artifact Twitter released Arcane Censure, which has the same sort of like bullhead symbol down at the bottom, and everyone was speculating, trying to figure out what this could mean. I thought perhaps this might mean that this card was generated by another card, but now that we see a second card with the same symbol, it kind of leads evidence to, it kind of supports the theory that this is a set symbol. But this is really bizarre because we already know what the set symbol is for the base set. It's like an artifact symbol. So if we have the base set symbol for the set, why are we seeing cards with a new symbol? Is this the second set? Is this the second expansion? Or I guess rather the first expansion, the second set. In that case, why is the Artifact team teasing set 2 when we still don't even know all the cards from set 1? Why wouldn't they just tease the cards from set 1? So if we just look at the card, the most logical explanation for that symbol is that it's an additional set further down the road. But that doesn't explain the Artifact team's bizarre behavior. You know what I mean? I mean, if you're the social media developer and you're trying to hype up the game, why would you show cards that aren't going to be available at release? They're not going to be available for presumably months after release. It doesn't make any sense. When you reveal cards that people are going to get to play with when they buy the game, like what the hell's going on? What does this symbol mean? Well, we know that Artifact cards have bronze, silver, and gold rarity, and this has a gold symbol, unlike Arcane Censure, which doesn't. So that kind of really supports the idea that this is a set symbol, because that's the most logical place to put color rarity, kind of like Magic cards. The Magic cards have a little set symbol in sort of like the side, and it's either black for common, silver for uncommon, gold for rare, and then orange for mythic. So it makes sense that this would also be the set. So I can't figure this out, man. This is weird. This is bizarre. What does this mean? What are they doing with this symbol? Help me figure it out. If you think you have a theory, if you think you know what they're doing, write down in the comments. Help me figure this out, because if we can figure out what this symbol means, the Artifact community will be very, very grateful. Also, let me know what you think of this new green card. Is it good? Is it bad? Is it situational? Is it meta dependent? I really love to know your thoughts. So head down to the comments and let me know. Thank you so much for watching. Dabacab out.